So very warm welcome back, everyone. So last week we learned about Swagger. Uh, it is supposed to be one of the topics for this week, but we'll not go there because we covered it in depth last week. And I suggest you guys refer back to our previous video. But today we have few important topics on hand, and they are all related to the security. Uh, Security, making our project secure. So this security is different from our API security. This is a project level security. Mm, What do I mean by API security, right? So uh, we have seen how to protect our APIs by making sure they are accessed by the right user who has the right username and password and credentials using JSON Web Tokens or JOT or JWT we have seen in the past. Now, this is a project level security where we are securing the entire Node.js project that we built. So, to demonstrate all of this, I have built a small code sample that we'll go over today. But for the theory part, the theory part or the concept part of this is here in this readme.md file that I'll share as well in the code base. So first is helmet. First concept is helmet. Then we will see the CORS as well as XSS and rate limiting subsequently in the lecture. So switching to the first concept, the helmet. So even before we sent helmet, what is helmet? Let's understand this example, right? So if I have a file uh, fun- uh, with something like this, dangerous function. Let's say we have a simple text file like this, and which is go to hack your machine. In real world, this is an executable JavaScript file with a function defined to hack your machine. As soon as this function gets executed, hackers will be able to grab details from your machine and whatnot. And uh, they could ship this file, this super dangerous code, to your machine in a disguise. They could very well save this as an image file or simple text file, and in the background, uh, your browser would understand that this is having a script tag, so it's a JavaScript file. So let's execute that. Why this happens is most of the older generation browsers, right? They were trying to guess the type of the file based on the content that was defined. Jeffrey, you have something that you want to ask? Uh, so, moving on, browsers were trying to predict that this is not a text file, but this is a script file. Let me execute the function, this function, and unknowing to you, this code will execute and they will hack your details. To prevent that, we use something called uh, helmet. Helmet uh, offers lot of different kind of headers. And what are the headers? Headers is something that we get back from our server as a response. And we have seen headers in action where we were sending a header when we were doing the JWT demo is we were sending header to our server in form of authorization and when we were authorization bearer. Similarly, uh, server can send you the headers as well when you uh, when you uh, when you get a response back. And one of that header that Helmet helps us inject is X content type no sniff. What this means is going back to our file is it prevents the browser from guessing uh, uh, guessing what kind of code what kind of file it is. If we send this as image file, browser will treat it as image file. It will not execute the code. Similarly, now modern browsers have become smarter and they are not doing it anyways, but still we should implement Helmet in our code with all these headers. Uh, XSS protection, we'll see it in detail very soon. Uh, this is another header. In production, it will just not allow us to access the website using simple HTTP. One has to use the HTTPS. A lot of these things are now being managed by a lot of other mechanisms in the application development. But still, we as a backend developers have responsibility on our hand as well to use something like Helmet and and secure our website. So to use Helmet, you have to do npm install Helmet in the new project and then import the Helmet. And all you have to do is simply add this line app.use Helmet, and this gives the uh, that gives the Helmet protection and all of these additional headers that you see X content type and XSS protection and all of this get injected by strict transport security. All of this get injected for us by Helmet. So this is very brief of how you can protect your website using Helmet, your website or your backend in this case, using Helmet, uh, and at least be mentally safe that basic security attacks are handled off. I'll stop here for a few seconds for any questions before jumping to the next topic. But again, installing Helmet is simple. npm install, then use the Helmet. I have the pseudocode here as well. How just you use it. And again, as I was saying, these are the first line of defense against the common security threats. Do this at a bare minimum level so that the most basic attacks can be prevented. This is like the bare minimum requirement, even though the modern browsers and modern hosting services and all of this are trying to handle this kind of attacks for our on our behalf. We do not rely on them as backend developers, as Node.js developers. We also take responsibility and make sure our code is protected from our side. So if even if the hacker is able to bypass one layer of security, they get prevented through our code. So yeah, you guys can ask any questions before I jump to next topic. So next topic is very interesting one, which could be useful in some cases and not useful in some cases. So let me explain what course is. Let's say you are building a website called google.com and you want to access some data that is there on the facebook.com. You try to call the facebook.com's API. Facebook.com will prevent you from getting the data on their website because what is happening is you're trying to access facebook.com, which is a domain one, from google.com, which is a domain two. Both are different domains, and by default, even modern browsers and the modern backend servers prevent this kind of uh, this kind of cross-domain communication. What do I mean by that? To demonstrate, I have built a simple Node React app, and I'll say the code of this. This React app is calling our server, which is running on our port 3000. So remember here, the key part is our backend is running on port 3000, and our React application is running on port 5173. So you could understand this as one domain and this combination as another domain. This is, let's say, this is Facebook domain, as I was saying, and this is Google app. So I'm trying to access from Google to Facebook data. Let's see what happens. So I'm seeing error failed to fetch data. And is this visible for you guys? This text, it's saying access to fetch uh 3000 from origin 5173 has been blocked by CORS, which is access control allow origin header is present in the requested resource. What does this mean? What we are saying is, hey, google.com, you cannot access our data. You cannot access Facebook's data just like that. This is called cross-domain requests. And by default, cross-domain requests are not to be allowed. Any confusion on this? What is cross-domain? This could be a very uh, frequently asked interview question. So be very, very clear on this. What is cross-domain? You have to be clear on cross-domain even before we jump to uh, the solution to this. Repeating myself again. We're trying to access data from our backend, which is running on a host three, which is with the port 3000, from our front-end React application, which is running on port 5173. This is which is a different host. So this is blocked, but in many cases you will want to allow that because let's say you are actually in business of selling APIs and 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 details. For example, let's say Google Maps. You could use Google Maps inside Google Maps app or also a lot of other websites, so different kind of maps. Now, when they show the maps, they are still getting the data from Google Maps. So your new website is able to still request data from Google because Google Maps in theory is allowing the cross-domain request. So in a scenario where you're trying to let your APIs be accessed by other applications or other domains, you would want to allow the CORS as well. So when you want your APIs to be accessed by just your domain, you don't allow the CORS. But if you're just building APIs for anybody to use, you have to allow the CORS. To allow the CORS, all we have to do is install yet another dependency, which is called conveniently CORS, CORS. And again, the implementation is super simple. We have to just do app.use CORS, and let me restart my server. And now let's look at a few things. First, let's keep it on console. And now I was able to get the data and I did not see the error. So cross-domain requests were allowed. So what happened in reality was uh, we still access the uh, s- same API, but because CORS was allowed on our server side, the different domain was able to access our data and get response from our our API, our API back. So this is very straightforward and simple. CORS is not a complex topic once you understand it. But if you sort of don't understand what at first place the CORS is, then it gets complicated super fast. Again, to go back, CORS is allowing web pages from one domain to access resources from another domain by default. Browser blocks this kind of request for security reasons because browser doesn't want to sort of violate some other website. And this is how actually in the theory works. So browsers actually check for CORS requests, and when this happens, the server responds with access allow origin in the header, and this is our server responded, and based on that, our browser was able to request the actual data. That's why in many cases in CORS you will see double request. This is different double request, but you might observe that your API calls happen twice, but it's not happening twice. Your browser is first checking if the server allows for uh, access control in cross origin or not, and uh, and and sends the header. So this is how it is implemented, as we saw. A few things to note: we are doing star here. We are allowing the cross origin request from anywhere in the world, but specific exact domains can be specified as well. What do I mean by that? Hey, I'm google.com and I want only Facebook to access my data, but not Instagram. So we can do that kind of filtering as well. And and there are also credentials involved in CORS as well uh, if you do like to do it. These are bit more advanced topics, bit out of purview of this lecture, but this is simple um, course implementation and how it works. Again, I'll provide all the code and I'll pause here for a few seconds for any questions you guys might have on course. Okay, moving on to uh, next topic, which is XSS. Uh, this is our third topic. Is cross-site scripting. So what is happening is, let's assume our um, server is taking a payload from user or some it's taking input as a payload and then executing that input or storing it in database, doing something on that. Now, user, if they are smart, they understand the JavaScript is a very universally understood language in most platforms. Instead of payload with real data, they might send a JavaScript code like this to our payload, and this could be a code again to maybe here we are doing simple alert, but they could send it to hack our backend completely to sort of grab our user data, our database details, and something like this. So unless we have made our server secure to look for bad input, the hacker can hack our server if we are not sanitizing the input that we get from the payload. So what is happening here is I'm sending and my server is processing this request and sending this message back. This means at this point this code would have executed, and in all likelihood this code would have hacked my server because obviously this hacker would not put a simple alert message. They would have the complex hacking code here. To prevent this kind of cross-site scripting hacking attempts, there was a library called XSS Clean, which is deprecated, previously used. But why it's deprecated? Because XSS implementation itself is very simple and there is no library really needed. What we really are doing is we are looking for common patterns. Like here in the common pattern, there's a angle bracket, left angle bracket, right angle bracket, with again closing angle bracket, and any function like executions, comma, double comma, uh, and we are replacing with the sanitized UTC characters. So let me give to the secure API that uses this XSS security. Again, in my payload, I'm sending the same insecure and hacking code, but my server now replaces the original sent message with the sanitized message. And now this is no longer a JavaScript executable code, but a sanitized input, which doesn't harm my server anyway. So before even I process my payload, I can use this kind of a sanitizer function just to simply sanitize my uh, input that I got from user. And that way, universally, my server is secure. It's a very simple, once you understand that somebody is trying to hack our server by sending uh, hacking code through payload instead of real payload. Let's say instead of message, there was like a let's say in JWT we had this kind of example, right? Where we had to provide name, email, password to register a new user. Somebody instead of name, they could have simply said script uh, instead of alert hacking function. In reality, if we did not sanitize our input, our server would have thought somebody is trying to uh, just register as a new user. But in theory, the hacker would have gained access to our backend because they sent the uh, hacking code in the name field, and they would have broken our system and stole the data. To prevent that, all we need to is use this kind of a simple sanitization function. And I have implemented this in the uh, sanitize, sanitize secure This is our secure API example where uh, we are getting a request.body and then just passing that request.body through our serializer function. And then in this case, we're just returning it, but in reality, we might have stored it in database or do something with it. So this is very simple once you again understand what is XSS and how we can prevent it. I feel like I went through the XSS part fairly quickly, so I'll pause here and give you guys few seconds to think over what it is and ask any questions if you guys have. And I'll keep this open so if anybody raises, I can see that. I'll be staying quiet, but I'm allowing you guys to think for any questions you might have. And then don't feel that you're on a spot to ask a question now. You can even ask the question after we have disconnected through Slack or anything. All right, then moving on to our final topic of the day is rate limiting. And rate limiting is a very critical aspect. What happens is many times hackers will try to brute force an attack on our backend and just waste our resources by constantly calling the APIs. So what do I mean by that, right? Is let's say I'm a hacker, right? And I ran my APIs. Here I uh, hit my server with 20 API calls in one go. All I need to do to simulate is come here. Let's even not do 20. Let's do 100, right? I'm hitting my server continuously. And now, if my server had a low capacity, this is 100. Imagine this being 100,000 instead of 100. If my server had a low capacity, my server would uh, slow down and I would not be able, somebody else who is a real user might not be able to access the features we are providing them. Let's say somebody is paying money to access our services, they will be denied. They will not be able to access because for 13 seconds, some malicious actor hit our server 100 times and and prevented uh, a real user from accessing the data. So to prevent somebody from constantly hitting our server, we can do something called rate limit. What is rate limit? Is hey, if you are coming from one IP, you can only access. So IP is a unique address that every computer in the world has. If you're coming from a unique computer, hey, you can only access our server, our APIs, let's say in our case, 3 times every minute. So this is where this is what the rate limiting is. So what do I mean by that? So to do the rate limit, there is something called express rate limit that a package which allows you to define the rate limit, and then in our server we define the configuration. So this is 60 into 1000 milliseconds, which is 1 minute. Okay, for 1 minute, maximum three API requests can be made. And what is the error message if they exceed three? Is hey, too many requests, retry after 1 minute. And then after you do this configuration as per your liking, let's say you had a very high bandwidth, high capacity server, this three could be 3000. So one for one IP every minute you allow 3000. For our demonstration, let's keep it at three. And you set application to use this rate limiter middleware. And once we do that, before we do that, let me restart my server. And let me try to hit this only. So first time I mean a minute I did it once, same minute I did it twice, same minute I did it third time. See, fourth time when I hit it, I'm getting instead of response back, I'm getting too many requests, HTTP status code 40429. And it's saying too many requests have been made to our server. Please wait for a minute to be expired. Um, this is again, you could save this time, and based on your server's capacity, you could increase this window from 1 minute to 1 hour, 24 hour, or allow more requests per minute or per second. Again, this depends upon the capacity. Let's say if you're a Facebook server or a Google server, you might be having very high capacity. Maybe let's say you're just starting your startup, you would be having low capacity servers. So based on your hardware capacity, you can set this limit, and also you could offer a different limits to different paying customers as well. This is what also allows us to uh, sell, let's say if you're a startup and you're selling some kind of a cool image generation service, and you have two plans, like one is $10 per month and other is $20 a month, you could allow more attempts per minute in $20 per month. So you could use this kind of configurations using rate limiter, and one, prevent your websites from completely being overwhelmed, and two, also offer different pricing uh, mechanisms. So let's try to run this 100 times. So if you see, I tried running it 100 times. It's still going on, but uh, after the third, our server is completely blocking any requests. And uh, after three, we are getting 429 rate too many request error. This how after the third request, we freed our server and our server resources for real paying users to to use. So this is about rate limiting, and that concludes the topics for the day. I'll share all of this, the code and everything, so you guys have access and you guys can study more in detail. And I'll stop here.